Welcome to Safe on Deck. For Episode 3, I sat down with Paul Hamlin at the Pensacola International Airport in Pensacola, Florida. Paul served 10 years in the Marine Corps, flying the legendary McDonnell Douglas F-4 Phantom II and the McDonnell Douglas F-18 Hornet, flying all-weather, day-night missions from land bases and aircraft carriers around the world. Paul next transitioned to civilian life, attended law school at the University of Florida, and has practiced law in the Pensacola area for over 20 years, handling thousands of criminal cases involving everything from bad checks to murder, civil cases, business disputes, and personal injury. Paul's an active member of the Red Star Pilots Association and flies formation hops in his immaculate 1983 CJ6 Nanchang. Thanks for taking the time to listen. In the future, I plan to continue to share similar interviews with both current and retired military aviators. If you have a question or a suggestion for a future interview, please leave it as a comment below. Safe on Deck, Episode 3 with Paul Hamlin. Enjoy.
I was born in Burlington, Vermont.
Okay. Any distinct memories? 1958. Okay, awesome.
Long time ago.
A couple of years. Any distinct memories of aviation from a young age? Was it something you were always interested in, or?
I don't recall being particularly interested. Real young. My dad was in the Vermont Air National Guard, and so we used to go up and park the car outside the fence, at the airport and watch them fly. So that's probably my earliest memory of it.
You have they have F-35s now. Do you remember what they were flying back then?
No, I don't. They've been through. They'll have a fighter one year, and the way the Air National Guard is, they'll have fighters for a couple of years, then they'll have a tanker.
Oh wow!
So they went back and forth. They had F-16s for a while. That was much later.
Absolutely.
I don't remember what they were flying.
I think okay, that makes sense. What was your path into the military? What kind of pointed you in that direction?
It ended up being the flying, and I didn't even know the Marines had jets. So when I found out that, I went to college, I was accepted to law school. Prior to going to law school, I talked to the various branches about flying, and so that's where it kind of picked up.
Absolutely. And I mentioned you are once a Marine, always a Marine. What made you choose the Marine Corps versus the Navy, the Air Force, even the Army, and the Coast Guard?
It's the Marines.
It's a great answer.
Yeah, I mean, that's just the stigma. The Marines are the best. So
okay, a recruiter got their hooks into you at the very beginning, and
yeah, and then they end up. It almost turned out bad because I had an aviation guarantee going to boot camp, and a week or so before I was ready to leave, they said, no, you don't really have an aviation guarantee, and like a knucklehead, I went anyway.
Okay. But it worked out well, obviously.
Worked out, yeah.
So how did that, was it something they were trying to take back, or was it maybe a test of, are you really interested in this? Do you know how that?
I don't know. I don't know to this day. I don't know what the glitch was.
Okay.
Maybe I thought it was something that wasn't, and they're recruiters,
Absolutely.
So even the officers, recruiters, so.
So got your degree and then went to boot camp after that?
Yeah.
Okay. TBS, so the basic school, and obviously I know Marine commissioning is a little different than what I did for the Navy for OCS. Can you talk a little bit about that?
The big suck, TBS. Yeah, that was wonderful. The most joy we used to get out of that is we had a captain in charge of our company, and every morning when he would come in, I would find a different window to yell out, "Skipper, hey Skipper," and he's like, "I'm not," it used to aggravate him, and we'd come from every angle that he could never figure out where it was coming from. That was my biggest joy in TBS. The rest of it, pretty much miserable.
Quantico, Virginia?
Yeah.
Okay. How long, about just ballpark of a program?
Well, you get OCS for 10 weeks, and then you got about 6, 8, 10 months of TBS.
Wow. Okay.
Training to be a grunt.
And that is the Marine ethos, right? Every Marine is a rifleman, so they want to kind of bake that into the cake first.
Yeah.
And then you go on to your different specialties after that.
Yep.
Okay. Any distinct memories other than that from TBS and OCS for the Marines?
I think we had the first platoon of all women platoon, and I don't know. Are we recording now?
Yes, sir. Oh yeah, we're going.
All right, so I'll be careful, but I don't mean anything. It's just different.
Absolutely, yeah.
And we'd be laying in the snow for a couple hours doing a practice ambush or something, and freezing cold, and then here they come in the back of a a vehicle to go get hot chocolate in the hut and warm up.
Wow.
It wasn't equal. It wasn't
Sure.
equal grounds.
I'm guessing everyone was learning a lot back then.
Yeah.
On both sides.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So let's see. Do you remember ballpark what time when you left OCS, TBS, when you came down here to Pensacola?
80-ish.
80-ish. Okay, fair enough. What was Pensacola like?
Pensacola for me wasn't. A lot of guys were single and having a great time in Pensacola. I was terrified to fail, so I spent a lot of time studying. I'd get to the old McGuire's once in a while, or the beach, but it was a job here. It wasn't a vacation as far as I was concerned. So.
Agreed. No, 100%. Yeah. For folks that, my generation, folks that went through about my timeline, they called it IFS, Introductory Flight Screening. So you got a couple flights in a Cessna, and then once that was done, API. After API, then you'd go on to your primary squadron, either Corpus or Pensacola. I don't believe IFS was always
We didn't have that.
So basically, your first flight in a military aircraft, I'm guessing T-34 most likely?
T-34. I was the first class that was all T-34s. The class right before me was the T-6 and kind of a mixture. And I tried to get the T-28. It's T-28. I'm saying T-6.
T-28, okay.
T-28.
So T-28s were totally gone. It was all the new T-34 Charlie.
Yep.
Wow. What an airplane to have your was that your first flight ever in a light aircraft?
I had a short flight in a 172 prior to that. Probably, I already knew I was coming in, so it was probably a year or so.
Okay.
2 years prior, but that's the only thing I had.
That's it. Wow. I jumped a little bit ahead, so let me kind of go back. So API was still the program name, right, at NAS Pensacola.
Yeah.
Just basic ground school classes, the Dunker, kind of the same
Boxing.
vibe. Boxing?
Yeah.
Really?
You don't have
No,
that
sir,
anymore?
not at all.
That was probably the best part of it. There was a physical fitness component to the school, and they pair you up. I mean, we had boxing, and we spent several weeks learning the different things, different punches and all that, and then we had matches at the end of it. It was pretty brutal. One of the guys I went through with, Kent Hansen, called him Dancing Hansen for a story I probably can't tell, and he was a Golden Gloves winner.
Wow.
Little wiry guy, probably 130 pounds. He ended up flying 46s, and he was coaching me up, so I did fairly well. But
wow.
it was brutal.
I had no idea that was part of the program. That's so cool.
I don't know the purpose, but
yeah, I think it's different now. I don't know that there's really any combatives other than people fighting between going to Corpus and staying here in Pensacola. That's about it.
Yeah, I had a chance to stay in Pensacola. I blew that, but I got through quicker. So that's another story.
It was a faster. I know that when I went through as well, that was kind of the gouge. Was Corpus was a little bit faster than Pensacola.
Yeah, I went to Meridian.
Meridian. Okay,
yeah.
So
that's a long time ago too.
I was going to say I think I'm making a lot of assumptions. So there were more options.
We must be in a totally different military than
I think we might be. Yeah, that's so cool. Okay, so what was API's done? You're moving on to the T-34. What was that first flight? Do you remember your first flight in the T-34, Charlie?
Vaguely. I mean, I was pretty well prepared. So and the way they did it, then your first flight, the instructor did most of everything from the back seat. Then I think the second one you took off, and then the third one you landed, or the third you did both. I don't recall, but
okay.
Yeah,
it's a powerful airplane. I've not flown in a T-34 Charlie, the turboprop version. Even the T-34 Bravo is an awesome machine. But
yeah, they had it detuned, so we didn't get the full power. But I guess they're worried about the lifetime of the engine. But
absolutely. So that's really cool. I guess bookending stuff here, I have some friends a little bit before me in training that they flew the last T-34 Charlies at Corpus when those went away. Yeah. So you saw it when it was a brand new airplane. That's so awesome.
Yeah.
What'd you think of it? Globally speaking, obviously you fly general aviation now. You went on to fly jets. In the big picture, was it a good primary flight trainer? Was it a good first step for folks?
Yeah, I think it was advanced enough that you had to get with it right away. It wasn't. So I think it served a military purpose, getting you prepared like that.
First solo, obviously, was, I think, about a dozen flights, and then you'd go on to do your first solo. Is that about right?
Yeah, that's right. All I remember is I remember a solo during the formation. I mean, the acro stage of it.
Yep.
And we thought we were pretty cool. We had arranged, if we get out there, we're all going to go over Garcon Point and watch each other and ended up being a complete cluster. We were, first time you do a loop by yourself, it's terrifying. It's pretty scary. I'm going to depart over the top. I'm going to have a problem, and then you're trying to watch your buddies on all these. We weren't as cool as we thought we were.
Totally fair. Yeah, and for me anyway, an initial solo just in the T6. There was an aero solo, so doing airbags, kind of like you described. When I spoke to Phil Webb, he mentioned actually I think there were multiple aero solos at different points in the program. We only had the one. A form solo. Mm-hmm. So I think 3. I've heard of other stuff. I guess the program changes, it adds or subtracts things as there's a need for it. But
yeah.
Any other good stories from primary, good memories or recollections from the mighty mentor?
No.
That's all the exciting stuff happened later. So cool. When it came time to select, how did that go? Obviously, I always tell folks needs of the Navy or Navy Marine Corps, number 1, your performance, number 2, your desire is oftentimes number 3, if not lower.
I asked for my order was helos, props, jets.
Okay.
I wanted to get done and get out. We go OCS, TBS. Primary, API, whatever it's called, primary. Marines are here for a long time. And when I came through, there was no jet influence. It was all helo guys that were instructors. And even the surgrads, do you have surgrads, selectively retained graduates?
Yes, it's a much smaller program now.
Yeah. And so we had a lot of them. And so they didn't have any fleet experience. So it was all helo. We were fed all this helo stuff. Plus, from the Marines, we'd come from TBS with our ground orientation, and it was shorter. You're going to get helos and get out in the fleet a lot quicker than jets. So there was a lot of reasons that kids pick helos. So, and the last thing I wanted was jets, go to Beeville somewhere and spend another 2 years, taking to get through. So, helos, props, jets.
Okay.
And then I was doing fairly well, so I was basically asking instructors, don't give me any more aboves. That's how they used to grade us above, by aboves, belows, fails, I guess. So I started giving those away. But by the time I was selected, they said, "Yeah, you're getting jets."
You've done too well.
I don't know. But I did something. But yeah, that's a terrible thing to say, isn't it? Dang, I got jets. But so then I wanted to see if I could stay in Pensacola. But I had put Beeville, Kingsville, whatever order it was, I didn't put Pensacola first. And so when I was trying to arrange that, they said, well, we gave you your last choice of aircraft type. We were going to give you your first choice of where you want to go, but it's too late. So I went to Meridian.
Okay.
I remember pulling in there, and it was 39 degrees, overcast, drizzling, red mud, clay everywhere. I'm like, whoa.
Big difference,
this
yeah.
is not fun.
How long were you in Mississippi for advanced?
I couldn't tell you. About 83, I got my wings. So.
Okay. What did you guys train in? What was the training aircraft?
T2 Buckeye.
The Buckeye.
Yep.
I'm told it spins really well. Straight wing, obviously.
Straight wing.
What'd you think of the Buckeye?
Flop all over the place. It's pretty cool.
Okay.
In fact, we even come back later to do your spin training in it, and just spin recovery. Not specifically for that, but when you get to the A4s, we would come back to the T2 to do the spin train, or because you didn't spin an A4.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was an aircraft that was used to kind of plus up fleet squadrons, but that spin training was done in the T2. At least that's what I've heard.
In fact, I think in the fleet before some programs we came back and did it in the T2.
Okay. So let's see, twin engine airplane, front and back cockpit, kind of like the T-34. Right. I'm told it was under.
Guppy. We called it the Thunder Guppy. It had straight wing and the tip tanks, fuel tanks.
Yeah.
I don't know where the Thunder Guppy came from, but that's the common term for it.
That's awesome. Underpowered.
Yeah.
Really, really loud.
Yep.
So a great trainer. It sounds like all the makings of a great trainer.
Yeah.
Tailhook too, right? Did you actually go to the boat?
We went to the boat in the Thunder Guppy.
Wow. What was that like?
It was on the Lexington.
Here in Pensacola, correct?
There's wood decks, straight deck.
A wooden deck.
Yeah, the Lexington is old.
Yeah, wooden straight deck. That is incredible.
Yeah, and your first look at it too. There's two out in the Gulf right now.
Out in the Gulf, yeah, just south of NAS Pensacola.
Yep.
So I'm guessing a ton of FCLPs, field carrier landing practice, a lot of that before you even are qualified to go out to the boat.
Yep.
So a very formative experience there. What was that first time around the carrier?
I remember, usually you go out in a 4-ship. Usually you have an instructor lead and 3 solos. And I remember flying overhead the ship. It wasn't our turn to come down yet. We come over the ship, and I'm thinking, oh my God, that thing is small.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a little nerve-wracking the first time. I think I did 3 landings on it before I even realized that I'd landed. You're like your mind is going 1,000 miles an hour.
I can imagine. It was at land. I'm told, and again, I'm a helicopter guy, so I don't actually know the sequence, but you'll, I think, essentially do passes with the hook up, essentially a touch and go several times. Mm-hmm. You'll trap, launch again, trap, launch again, and then a couple iterations, and then you go back to the beach.
Yeah.
Okay. Man, a wooden deck with a jet. That is incredible. Wow.
Yeah, I don't remember the length of it either, but it's not long.
Yeah, not long at all. What else did you do in the T2? Was there any air-to-air, air-to-ground phase? Obviously navigation, formation, those very basics.
I don't think there was any air-to-air or air-to-ground. I think formation was about as colorful as it got.
Okay. Did you wing out of the T2, or do you wing at a later point in the training?
Later.
Okay. Yeah. So what's next after
From there, we went to A4s.
Okay.
Jets. Yeah.
It's a good-looking airplane.
Oh, that's a fun airplane to fly, too.
TA4J?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, the scooter.
Yep. It was a big step up, I'm guessing.
Yeah. But it wasn't a complicated, it was not a complicated airplane. I mean, the avionics, everything was old school in that thing.
Very small, I'm told, very small cockpit.
Yeah, even I'm not a big guy, and I would my shoulders would be hitting the canopy rails. It's real thin cockpit.
So I'm trying to think on timeline here. You said mid-'80s, basically?
Early 80s. I got my
80s.
wings in 83, so that would be after, the T-34, the T2, and then the TA4.
TA4,
Then
okay.
you get your wings.
Did you go back to the boat in the TA4?
Yep.
Really? Same carrier, the Lexington?
I think it was on the Lexington. I'm not sure.
Okay, but I didn't realize you went to the boat multiple times prior to winging. That's interesting.
Yeah. Okay. It's and the the TA4 is really underpowered, so you have to really be on top of that.
Okay. I'm told in the older jets you'd stay up on the power, but you'd use the speed brake.
Yep.
And that was your way. You could slam that speed brake back in and continue to accelerate, but the spool time on the engine would not save you.
Yeah, that's why you wanted the power up higher, so you get the brakes out dragging.
That second time going to the boat, I'm guessing it was probably a little bit easier in a Skyhawk?
No. It was, it was different. That Skyhawk would so maneuverable. It's got that little thin, it's looked like kind of a triangle shape, the way the wing is, and so it's real touchy, and it's underpowered. So you're busy at the boat.
Working hard. Did you go? Might be a silly question. TA4J, so the 2-seat version of the Skyhawk. Was that all the jets were 2-seat jets, or was there any single-seat A4 time in there for you?
No, there wasn't any single seat, which is a shame because the A4 Mike was a real neat airplane. We didn't get to fly.
I was going to say, I know the Marine Corps operated it pretty extensively at that time.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. So we just got the T.
Okay. So as a Marine leaving in the TA4J, what were your options? Where could you have gone in the fleet, platform-wise?
We had A4s, A6s, F4s, C-130s, A6s.
I think we mentioned EA-6B.
EA-6B.
Yep,
yeah,
electronic
I lumped that
warfare.
in with the A6s. So there was a lot.
A lot
of
yeah.
options. It was the whole selection process all over again. And you had a senior Marine in every squadron, a training squadron that, despite your grades, they would evaluate, is this guy going to be a good guy for this community, or where do we want to put him? So you had a human factor as well as a numerical factor.
Is that something you as a student were thinking about a lot, or just kind of it's going to end up where it ends up? You just do your very best.
Well, I wanted F4s, so I didn't think about it a lot, about what my grades were. Obviously, I was trying to do the best I could, and you really needed it because that was where the higher score guys went, was the F4. That was the popular.
That's where people wanted to go.
Everybody wanted to go.
Yeah.
After we'd already, foregone the helicopters and got stuck in jets.
What a problem to have.
Yeah, that's a big problem.
That's cool. So when did you find out you were going to go fly the Phantom?
I think about the time we got our wings.
Okay.
We get our orders to where we're going.
Were you the only guy, the top guy, one of a couple?
I was the only guy that got F4s. Of all my training group of those classes, the two of us ended up with F4s over a period of time that I went to TBS with.
Okay.
I'm only one guy and myself got it.
Wow.
F4s. He got our F4s.
So the reconnaissance variant.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Where was the, I assume probably still the same terminology, FRS, or was it called the RAG?
It's called the RAG.
The RAG. I like that term better anyway.
RAG's better.
Replacement Air Group. So where was the training squadron for the F4 for you?
Yuma, Arizona.
Oh, my. Out in the desert.
Yuma.
Really?
Oh, yeah. I'm going to live there someday.
Really?
I love it out there.
What do you like about the desert?
The flying was great. I mean, you have the tax range, and you go out and dogfight, and then you come ripping down Border Road, turn in from out for a 6-mile initial to the runway, and as fast as you can go. But that's they can't do that anymore.
Very true. Yeah.
It was great out there. And then every squadron would come out and use the adversary's airplanes in the tax range to get ready to go overseas. So you're always seeing your buddies, and there's always another squadron rolling through every month. The O Club was a lot of fun.
That's really, really cool.
Yeah.
What was it like? Was that your first introduction to the fighter side of naval aviation?
Yeah. Other than some of the instructors, I guess, in the TA4, but that was it. And then we were stashed for almost a year when we got there. So we had jobs like flight line officer. And
really, what is that job? I've not heard the term. What does that job entail?
In a Marine fleet squadron, just like the Navy. I mean, you have ground jobs.
Absolutely.
And so a flight line officer was like the the plane captains.
Okay.
Turn around the airplanes, stuff like that. So
did you actually get to put hands on the airplanes at all, or was it more of a supervisory role, basically?
It was neither, because we were cone heads. So and that's what we called students. We called cone heads. So you were below an E3, I guess. So we didn't tell him if we were smart. If you're smart anyway, you didn't tell anybody what to do. We were just stashed there waiting to get in the airplane.
Gotcha. Did you get to sandbag any flights, jump in the back of a jet, and kind of have an exposure to it that way, or did they keep you away from the airplanes until?
There just wasn't any rides we could get.
Okay.
Yeah. The first time I flew an F4 was the first time I flew an F4. So
okay.
I was in the front seat.
Yeah.
Yuma is interesting because there's a 500-foot restriction on takeoff for about 5 miles, I guess. So the first time a student takes off in an F4, there's an instructor in the back seat, but in our back seats, there's nothing. There's no stick.
No flight controls.
So you're,
Wow.
So we used to watch guys take off in afterburner. So you're not used to that either. You get afterburner in an F4. That's a no kidding fighter instead of the A4 you've been flying around. So the guys would take off and they would blow through that 500 feet, down, and then they'd come back. It was pretty funny.
Wow. Is it just like a noise abatement thing or an airspace management type thing? But they kept you at 500 feet all the way out, and then you could climb.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I don't remember specifically,
Oh, no, sure.
Mentions of it, but I just remember that being a highlight. You got somebody sitting on a rocket, and they haven't ever flown
yes.
that before. It was just kind of funny.
Absolutely. Do you remember that first flight in the Phantom?
I remember the takeoff.
Okay.
Because I thought I did pretty well, on the flying out of there, but I don't remember the flight.
Gotcha.
I don't know what happened.
No, makes sense. Any memorable flights going through the syllabus? I mean, like you said, it's a big step up in terms of T-34, T-2, A-4, and now you're in that fleet, that first gray aircraft, I guess you'd say.
Yeah, the big thing about that too is you got no help. The guy doesn't have a stick in the back seat. Nobody can save you for anything. So this is the first time that you're, other than your solos, where it's on you if something goes on. But I had one incident where both engines quit in a maneuver, a dogfighting, like a barrel roll type thing, and we don't know if it was the adjustment of the throttle,
okay,
the fuel shut off, the fuel mixture, or it could have been me just shutting the throttles off, because during this maneuver you go burner back to idle, try to spit the guy out, and you roll. Could have been me. I'm not discounting that. But,
sure.
So I'm upside down just before dusk over was it the Superstition Mountains? What mountains are there? Right out of the side of Yuma. Anyways.
Okay.
And the engines quit. So
What altitude were you at?
15,000 probably, and 10,000.
That's pretty darn low, man.
10,000's the deck.
Yeah.
So get line. I think I can't remember what we used to try to glide at 230 or 230 or something. I don't know what, but you get your best glide. The F-4 doesn't glide, so
No, not
so
at all.
now we're going to throw out the rat,
Okay.
and you got to do that to get some electrical power to start it.
So it's just basically ram air turbine, basically just a air-powered...
It's a fan.
A fan, yeah.
Yeah.
So with that powers hydraulics, so at least the flight controls can move.
Yeah. So now I'm looking at, all right, I'm going to pop this out, and you're going to solve itself. Either it's going to pop out and work, or it's going to pop out, chink, and it's going to be gone. So it came out. I got one engine started, and we went back and landed, no problem.
Wow.
But that was pretty colorful.
I can imagine, yeah.
But you've been through emergencies, like you don't think about it until you're signing the logbook, then you realize your legs are shaking.
I've lost an engine, but I had 2 more engines. There's a tremendous difference between losing your only 2 engines.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Wow. That's really neat. I'm guessing we already kind of talked about air-to-air, air-to-ground. Were those phases brought in at all in that initial training, or is that more in your fleet squadron?
No, that was the RAG.
That wasn't the
covered
RAG.
that thoroughly.
Okay. What was it like fighting another airplane? It's a broad question, I know.
I'm trying to, I mean, it's a competition. That drives a lot of us, in aviation. It's just competition. So, you want to beat up on the guy. Of course, we were students, and what students don't realize is the instructors are trying to teach you something. So if you do correctly what you're supposed to do, you should come out ahead. I remember I was an instructor in the F-18 RAG before I got out, and teaching dogfighting. So one of the things we would demonstrate to the kids, in a one circle fight, this is going to get probably beyond the scope, but sometimes you want to turn at a faster rate, which means you're turning more degrees faster. Sometimes you want to turn in a smaller radius. So there's different speeds that the aircraft will perform each of those better. So we would simulate to them, and then based on the type of aircraft, this is what came out of Vietnam and Top Gun and all that based on a certain type of aircraft, you would fight a certain type of fight. For example, if you're fighting a MiG-23, he's fast and he takes a big turn. So you want to fight a one circle fight where you're inside him making angles on him. So if a kid did it right, we would fly similar to the characteristics of a MiG-23. So we'd make a big wide turn. We're not flying the F-18 to its maximum force. We're trying to demonstrate to the kid, if the guy makes a big turn and you fly this type of flight, you should be able to shoot him. And so that they recognize that. Well, we did that, and I got shot, and the kid shot me 2 or 3 times because I'm teaching him how to do this. So I hear him in the hallway when we're getting ready to debrief, telling his classmates, "Yeah, I kicked Trash's ass." I'm like, So
wrong thing to say.
The next day we debriefed and everything. The next day we went out, did our flying, and we started the fight. And I basically gunned him till bingo.
The whole time.
The whole time. Just didn't even let him out of that. Usually once the training purpose is accomplished, you stop what you're doing, save gas, get more things. But no, I just gunned him till he called bingo. So then we went back and landed, and the whole debrief was he's waiting for me in the debrief room. I just came in and said, "Go tell your friends you kicked Trash's ass today." So that was the end of that. I don't even know how I got to that story.
The lesson was learned. No, it makes perfect sense. And kind of jumping ahead, you ended up flying the F-18 after the F-4.
Right.
So yeah, definitely I'm guessing 2 very different aircraft to employ in the air-to-air arena, the F-4 versus the F-18. Probably a lot of strengths and weaknesses for the latter. But
big difference.
What was it like fighting the F-4 in that air-to-air environment? I know, obviously, well, from what little I know, big smoky engines. So when you put that power up, you're going to be seen very, as opposed to probably an A4, which is a smaller jet. Did you get to do, when you were in the F-4 RAG, did you fight only other F-4s?
No, we fought dissimilar.
Dissimilar, okay.
Yeah.
Any strengths and weaknesses, any memorable stuff from that?
I don't, well, we got some airplanes that we don't talk about that in the fleet we got to fly against. But in the training and the RAG, we just flew against F4s, F5s.
Okay.
I don't know if we.
Some of those F-5s are still around down in
Those
Key
F5s
West.
are
And
cool.
Yeah.
That's a neat airplane.
It's a
They're hard to see.
MiG-28 for those watching Top Gun.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Get a picture of that.
Yeah, very, very small. I'm told those guys will want to get head on with you because you just cannot see them.
That's what I was just going to say. Then when they point their nose at you, they disappear.
Wow.
I mean, they're tiny. They're gone when they do that.
So they're doing that, I assume, to get close to you, so then they can get into a turning fight, or what's obviously depends on what threat aircraft they're emulating.
Yeah, but and they don't have a radar missile, so they've got to get within range of something else.
So they want to get you close into that knife fight, and that's where their strength lies.
Yeah.
Okay.
But the F-18 is pretty good at that too. Now the F-4, we're going to take them 3 states to turn around, but you look bad doing it. So.
When you bleed energy in a Phantom, can you get it back quickly, or when it's gone, it's gone? And I know that's a broad question. But
you can get it back.
Okay. And again, I'm sure it all depends on. There's a lot more to it than these big, broad statements that I'm making.
Yeah, but you were in an F-4. It didn't matter. You're still in an F-4. That's a pretty cool airplane.
What kind of? Did you have the gun? I actually don't even know if the Marine F-4s had a gun. No gun. So, AIM 9, AIM 120.
AIM 7.
AIM 7. My mistake. So the Sparrow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember if that was a. Again, I only know what I've read.
Forward quarter.
Forward quarter.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's got some.
So, yeah, the radar in the front of your jet's going to essentially do most of the work, and then once you launch the missile, it does a little bit of the rest of it.
Yeah,
broadly speaking.
I don't remember.
Well, as opposed to like an AIM 9,
Yeah.
It's a heat seeker.
Right.
So.
It's on its own after it leaves you. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. The Phantom's a 2-seat jet. So, like you mentioned, when you're starting off, that's I'm going to use big air quotes here. You're a winged aviator with a student pilot. You have an instructor pilot in the back. When you went to the fleet, who's in the back of the jet next?
It's just the regular squadron guys. Just the back seaters.
NFOs.
Yep.
What was your experience flying with them? Now it's not two winged aviators, but a pilot and NFO. What was that experience like?
It's great. I mean, the back seat guy, gets the hotel accommodations, takes the ugly sister. You got to have that guy.
Oh gosh, that's kind of what I expected to hear. I know from what I've heard, the Phantom is a very complex airplane, so fighting it as a team is absolutely critical.
Yeah, I mean, I'll use my good buddy Red Eye as an example. Red Eye was invaluable. He ejected out. I had to eject one time, and he survived. He's okay.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
But
out of an F-4?
Yeah.
Okay.
Off of Beaufort, out in the water. But the exchange between crew are you get to be good buds with all the people in the squadron, so there's a lot of good natured stuff, and his job was to run the radar, and so we'd take 30-mile splits and we'd come at each other, and he'd be working the radar, and I'm like, come on, Red Eye, you good at contact, and he's like, we'd be arguing, and then the worst thing for a Rio was if the pilot could call him onto it. I'd say, look 10 high, 5 right. The guy's right there, 10 miles away. And then he'd call a contact. And well, no kidding. I can see him. I don't even need your contact. So then we get an engagement, and then Red Eye go do some pilot shit.
Yeah.
Well, Red Eye, if you'd have done some Rio shit, I wouldn't have to do any pilot. So, it used to go like that. So, but those guys are invaluable in the backseat. And it's so comforting to, when the weather's bad or things are going wrong, to have just another person to help
absolutely
make the decisions and stuff. So. We always had those jokes, but they'd say stuff about the pilots too.
Sure.
But I wouldn't want to. That was a big difference going to the F-18 because it was a single seat.
Absolutely. So it's all you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You had to take the ugly sister yourself. It was
awful. That's very cool. So going through, you finished up with the F-4. What were your options in terms of deployment? Or I say deployment. Your first fleet squadron, is it East Coast, West Coast, Japan? I'm guessing.
It was Hawaii, East Coast, West Coast, or Hawaii.
Hawaii.
And we knew that before we went to the RAG where we were going, and we were taking so long to get through that some guys were transitioned to the Navy F-14. Got a Navy commission and.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Yeah. And so. I was headed for Beaufort, South Carolina. That's where I was going to go. And I had a chance to go to Hawaii, Kaneohe Bay, to change that before I left. But I decided to go to Beaufort. I thought the flying would be better. In Hawaii, there's the Hawaii Air National Guard, and whatever ship is going by, that's what you got. But Beaufort, we go fight anybody, anywhere, all over the place. So I didn't opt for Hawaii. And it worked out better because I got a lot more flight time than my peers at that time.
It was a great decision. That's cool.
Yeah.
What was Beaufort like?
Beautiful Beaufort by the sea. It's sand fleas, 190% humidity. It was wonderful. But the flying was good.
Absolutely.
The Great Santini.
Yes, I've seen. Yep.
Yeah.
How much of that is accurate? Is that a documentary or more of a docudrama?
Well, I don't think I ever hit my kid with a basketball, but I probably fouled him hard a couple times,
Yeah. Like most Hollywood stuff, it's a lot of...
Yeah, it's a lot of exaggeration.
Exactly. But great flying scenes, as I recall.
Yeah, it was pretty good flying scenes.
I'm guessing, obviously, Oceana, jets to the north, Seymour Johnson, there's some Air Force guys there. Did you guys, that obviously, you talked about flying against other aircraft. Was that a pretty common thing? It wasn't hard to find other people to fight?
Yeah, we had plenty of adversaries all the time.
Gotcha. Was it... what was it like fighting, I'm guessing, like I said, F-15s, you mentioned F-14s up at Norfolk?
Yeah,
Oceana, sorry.
Yeah.
Yep.
It was fun. It was a lot of fun. We fought Navy airplanes, other Marines, Air Force, Air National Guards, reserves. It was you learn a lot from all those different
Absolutely.
guys. We always were envious of the coon-ass militia, the Louisiana Air National Guard. They flew F-15s.
They still do, I think.
And we would do exercises with them, and they broke every rule there was. They'd come over. They were like adversaries.
Okay.
And they would be, the situation would be like, the base is under attack, and we'd fight them out over the water and stuff. But they would come through over right at the hangar top level, ripping across the field. They were having fun.
Yeah.
We didn't have a lot of rules, but
they broke whatever rules there
they were better.
Wow, that's incredible. Favorite, big broad strokes, I know. What would you say favorite aircraft to fight against in the F-4? I know that's probably a tough question.
In the F-4?
Yeah.
That's tough because in the F-4, probably maybe the Kafir, the Israeli built Kafir.
Who had those?
The 40, they had them in the adversary squadron in Oceana, and they had them in Yuma. Okay. And that thing was just a stovepipe with little bitty wings on it, and it was real fast. Everything else we fought, we were at a disadvantage with our turns and our everything. So it was real was work. But the Kafir was similarly situated. So I remember one chasing me out of we would work on the tax range off of Oceana, and it's got all the telemetry and all that. And if you had a wingman go down, or somebody was, when I say go down, maintenance, they didn't make it out there. There might be 3 Kafirs out there and 2 F5s. You might not know what's out there, and so sometimes you end up being the only guy that make it. F4s had a lot of maintenance. Okay. So you'd start out with 4, you might end up with 2 or 1. I remember trying to outrun a Kafir, take a shot, and turn around and get out there, doing like about 800 knots. The Kafir chasing me down. Finally, we ran out of range. Yeah. So, oh my gosh. But I don't know how much faster he would have been. But those guys were fun.
That's incredible. Yeah. I think ATAC, there's a civilian company that still flies the Kafir, but so there's still a couple in the U.S. But that's really, really neat. What did you go to the boat in the F4?
Not in the F4.
So Marine F4s were land-based in general, or just your specific squadron?
Just during that. I think it was during that time. The squadron I went to had just come off the boat, I think, when I first showed up. Okay. But during my time, the F4s didn't, but the F-18s did. I qualled in the F-18. That was part of the RAG.
Okay.
So when we transitioned to F-18s, we all did day-night quals.
Makes sense. Obviously, flew the F-4 in the day and the night. Was it a good night fighter, or was it at that time kind of long in the tooth?
F-4?
Yes, sir.
We didn't do anything at night if we could have that.
Oh, okay.
No, it wasn't a good for anything at night, really.
Gotcha. Any deployments in the F-4? Do you get to go anywhere outside the U.S.?
Did the Westpac, one Westpac tour. Okay. Japan, Korea, Philippines.
Good stories, good experiences.
Yep. But it was nothing really exciting. We didn't, we planned for a lot of things,
sure,
contingencies, but we didn't get to execute them. I think one night we sat in the airplanes, loaded up, thinking we were going to Korea.
Really?
And we sat there for few hours over, and it never went. So, but it was oddly, if something was going on in the Middle East, imagine that. But our plans were to Korea.
Interesting.
Hit it off. So I don't remember the reason.
Oh, sure.
We didn't ask.
Yeah.
We just said, hey, we get to go blow stuff up. Yeah, until you figured out there wasn't enough tankers for everybody to. Then it's not such a fun mission after that.
Was it a primarily air-to-air mission set or air-to-ground, or was it an even split?
We did a lot more air-to-ground than people generally think. You think of an F-4 as just a fighter.
Absolutely.
But in the Marines, close air support, I think the F-4 in Vietnam did like 80% of its missions were close air support.
Okay.
So we did a lot of that.
Dumb bombs. Obviously, I'm trying to think of what specific munitions you guys would use air to ground. Rockets at all?
Yeah, rockets.
Okay.
Rockets. 500 pound to up to 2,000 pound bombs. We didn't do too. I think we had some laser designated type bombs.
Okay.
We did. I don't recall doing much of that.
Gotcha. Is it a team sport as well as your weapons systems officer, your RIO? Are they really working hard with you there, or is that the air to ground employment really more the pilot's domain?
The backseaters helping you out a lot because we didn't have it's not like we're the weaponry now is you put a symbol on something and it fixes everything and that's where it hits.
Mm-hmm. We
were basically, if you're at a 30-degree dive at 400 knots with one wing down 10 degrees, there's where the bomb's going to fall off and go. I mean, it was all based on hitting the numbers, and that way you could calculate where the bomb was going to hit.
So very, very precise flying, it sounds like.
Yeah, you have to be real, and that, it's helpful for the backseater to be keeping track of that while you're looking out the window.
Absolutely.
And then, you pickle 100 feet high, that's going to create an error. You don't have a pipper that corrects all that for you,
Okay, so, oh, wow, so it's not corrected.
You're just iron bombing. When we come in for a level laydown, we'd have 10 500-pounders on, and when at 200 feet, 500 knots, I think, and when the target passed under the nose, you hit the button.
Oh,
that's
my gosh.
Real accurate stuff, but it worked.
Yeah. Retarded, I'm guessing the tail kit on those? Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing it's got to give you a little bit of a delay so you can keep moving while the bomb hangs out over the target and then actually impacts.
We were disappointed when we got the F-18s that we couldn't use napalm, but they couldn't figure out when they were testing the ordnance, they couldn't make it drop. It would fly, you'd release it and it would fly along under the wing and stick around the airplane.
Oh,
so
God.
We gave up on napalm. I don't know if it was for that reason or...
Did you drop napalm in the F-4?
Yeah.
Is it a pretty... I've seen video. That's about it. Is it a pretty easy weapon to employ, or...?
It's no different than dropping anything else, but it's just cooler.
A very visual medium, so to speak.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Gosh.
Today you probably couldn't. We called it shake and bake. The first guy would come with the bombs, and the second guy would come with the napalm, which is shake and bake.
Okay, that's what the term means.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Wow. Talking about different weapons, you mentioned no gun. Did you ever get to shoot any of the air-to-air missiles? Was that something that were there an opportunity to maybe shoot down a drone? Or
yeah, we just go to Rosie Roads and shoot.
Down in Puerto Rico? Okay.
Yeah.
Just a little det down there, basically a weapons det?
Yep.
I know I'm asking you to dig real deep. Do you remember what you guys shot? Was it just a drone of some kind? Or I know at some point F-4s became drones. Now F-16s are drones, which is kind of a weird thing to consider. But
yeah.
QF-86s, I think, at one point.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of what we shot. I think we shot the smaller, looks like a torpedo kind of drone.
I know the one you're talking about. Yeah.
And then we did get a chance to shoot at an F-4, but I wouldn't shoot at an F-4 ever.
Yeah, it just seems wrong.
Yeah. The first time I was in a dogfight with an F-4 and I was in an F-18, I just refuse to call guns. I'll never call guns on an F-4 because it's not you. It's the airplanes making you better. It's not the pilot. So these F-18 guys that would call guns on F-4s, that was always a problem.
Yeah. You mentioned some of the maintenance issues, and I flew the 53 in the Navy. Big gray static display, as we would joke.
Yeah.
We'd palm tree every so often, more often than not. And I got a lot of time FCFing, which I loved, but was that something at the tail end of the F-4's time? Was it maybe a bit more maintenance intensive and just kind of growing old in the tooth?
I think it was just the way it was because I didn't fly it long. I had about 600 hours.
Okay.
But hours were hard to come by back then. You'd get 7, 8 hours a month, 10-hour a month.
Wow.
So, yeah, and but I always remember, it's more mechanical. I mean, an F-18, a guy goes plugs something in, it tells him a code. He takes it out, puts it in. The F-4 was a lot more labor intensive, I guess. And when you got labor intensive things, that takes longer.
Absolutely. So. I miss it in some ways. I miss that
Yeah.
old broken helicopter, but there's also a beautiful thing for the T6 that I fly. You walk out to it and it starts up. And I'm guessing that was the experience in the F-18. You walked out to it and it was a new airplane for you.
Yeah, it smelled like a new car. Some of the ones we had were so new.
Wow. F-18 Alpha?
I flew the A's through the D's.
A's through the D's. Okay. That's really cool.
Yeah, we when Hawaii was standing up their F-18 squadrons, I was in the RAG in Yuma, back in Yuma as an instructor, and El Toro, in El Toro, and when they get their airplanes, we would deliver them to Hawaii. So brand new F-18s. I mean, it no kidding smelled like a new car. It was amazing.
That's really amazing. Very, very cool. Okay, I don't want to jump too far ahead too quickly. How many? You said 600 hours in the Phantom?
Yeah.
Why did you leave? Was it something that they basically, the Marine Corps said, hey, we're transitioning?
Yeah, we were getting rid of the F-4s.
Okay. Did you fly one to the boneyard or?
No.
No, just
no.
You left before that. Okay.
We had a not so good experience. We knew when we were leaving Westpac, when we were coming back to Beaufort, who was going where.
Okay.
Different people had orders. There was 4 of us that were staying in the squadron, 4 pilots, and we were all going to transition to the F-18. The CO, we saved enough flight time for us to go to Top Gun and to be able to fly the F-4s a little bit till the F-18 transition. Well, there was a peeing contest between our CO and the group CO, who I mentioned to you earlier.
You did, yep.
And they said, welcome home, turn in all your flight time to the group and shut it down.
Gosh.
So, we could have flown that flight time overseas. We saved it for that, and, so, whatever that leads, I don't remember what the question.
Oh, yeah.
But so we weren't, we had no we were transitioned. It wasn't a choice. In fact, everybody, wanted to go to the F-18 because, first of all, no F-4s would be left, but it was the next
thing.
And it was, the big deal back then.
Absolutely. That's still a big deal in many ways today. It seems like an awesome airplane.
Yeah.
What was the FRS, or I keep saying FRS, I apologize, the RAG? What was the RAG light like in the Hornet?
We went to Cecil Field. It was a joint RAG, Navy and Marine.
Navy and Marine Corps, yeah.
So as already being fleet fighter guys, we didn't get all the flights. It was still a pretty long syllabus, but and it was different because there's a lot of simulator stuff. We didn't have any simulators in the F-4. We had simulators for radar, which was amazing how you could look at a dot and tell it intercept it, turn on it. I mean, that was amazing, which later in the F-18 made for very useful. Old F-4 guys had a lot of tricks for all this radar games they play these days, because we could do it without locking anybody up, just watching the drift, and it's amazing what you can do on radar.
You had a significantly better understanding of how it worked.
Yeah,
that's really cool.
And we could. One time I was in a group of guys, and we were going to get to shoot down a drone with a live missile in Rosie Roads, and the shot was going to be the target was going to be below 100 feet, doing Mach 1.2 or something like that. And we had to be above 10 or 15,000 feet. And the deal was, whoever got the lock got to shoot. So of course, we're all trying to cheat anyway. But some of us F-4 guys were able to go to PD mode on the radar, pulse Doppler, which goes more on the speed of something. You could look down on something and see the motion. So, salty old F-4 guy, PD, and these guys are all in this automatic sweep stuff and this fancy stuff. And we're just in raw. Beep, there's a blip. Lock them up in the appropriate mode, and we get the shot instead of somebody else. So that stuff really made a difference.
That's incredible. I didn't even think about that not having, there was no or very few simulators for the F-4. You just got in the airplane and flew with a guy in the back seat that didn't even have flight controls.
Right.
Wow. Okay. So, Yep. So what was it like training with the Navy again back at Cecil Field? Was that hopefully a good experience? Or?
Yeah, it was good.
They had a little bit more F-18 time than you, so I guess that's a good thing to start from a training perspective. And then was it back to Beaufort, you said? In the F-18?
Beaufort to fleet squadron.
Okay. But that was you said you took it to the boat. Here off the coast of Florida, I'm guessing somewhere?
Out of Jacksonville.
Flew
out of Cecil on, I think the forestall was coming by.
Okay, so
Coast.
I want to go back through the list. T2, TA-4J, and then now the Hornet going to the boat. I'm guessing it probably got easier.
Well, the Hornet we did at night, so we didn't do it at night in the training command. So that made a little difference.
Yes.
A little bit.
I can only imagine. Yeah.
Yeah. Really, the most exhilarating, I should say, part was being shot off the boat, not necessarily landing on it, because that deceleration that you feel when you're not decelerating, but your rate of acceleration is decreased. When it lets go of the airplane, it throws you forward. I mean, you're forward in the straps. Of course, your mind goes crazy that you're slowing down and you're going in the water. So people bend the throttles over practically, because that feeling. I mean, your body can fool you.
So do you go? I guess power's all the way up. Do you release the flight controls? Or your hands up here and you grab the stick after you've actually come off the boat?
Yeah.
Okay.
You got we call it the towel rack. There's a little handle, and you hold onto that with your right hand, and on the left, there's a bar that flops down. So when you push the throttles forward and you hook your fingers over that, because when you get thrown back, people pull, the throttle comes back with you. So that little bar allowed you to have something to grip so the throttles wouldn't come back.
Okay.
And off you go.
What the heck is a night cat shot like? Is there I'm guessing if there's a visible horizon, that's a great thing. Is it more of an instrument maneuver?
There's no visible horizon.
So you're just launched into the blackness.
It's black as black can be.
Oh, gosh.
And there's a few lights on the ship, but once those are behind you, it's behind you. And that's what I'm saying, the feeling that you get, because it literally throws you forward in the straps when the acceleration stops. When it's pulling you and it lets go and you go in the air, you go forward.
Wow.
You think you're just slowing down and you're headed for the water, so mash the throttles and get out of there.
I guess that's why folks have literally flown into the water coming off the cat, because of those very disorienting
and then
feelings.
The funny thing is, you always somebody's always on hot mic. They're going on the downwind. Oh Jesus! Oh, there's always somebody doing that.
And everyone else, no mercy, is listening.
Yeah, Naval Aviation, there's no mercy.
No mercy at all. Wow. That's cool. So obviously F-4 to F-18, so pretty big change. What was the Marine Corps' mission for the Hornet early on? What was the same as the F-4?
F-4, yeah.
Just literally replaced. So was there a lot, and this is something I've heard of folks that flew, again, in my community, the RH-53 and then the MH-53. Well, that's the way we always did it. That's the way we did it back in the RH. Was there a lot of that as well? It's not learning how to best employ the new airplane. Or was it? Hey, no, this is a new machine. Let's go out and use it to its max.
There wasn't much fighting technology. I should say that those four guys that I said we're going to stay in the squadron, we went down to the RAG, and in the simulator, one of the things they do in the simulator, the F-18 was the first airplane where the HUD was qualified as the primary attitude instrument. Before that, airplanes that had HUDs had other things that were the primary, but this was the HUD was the thing that ran everything. And all. Well, one of the things they would do is in the simulator, right? Take a left, descend, squawk this, and get you distracted, and then they'd fail the HUD, and you couldn't fly the thing, and people would crash in the simulator all the time. And so we're doing these simulators, and finally they're like, "What are you guys doing? How are you doing this?" Because they would do that, and we wouldn't crash. Well, right in front of your right knee on the lower part of the instrument panel was a standby gyro. It's the old-fashioned, old-school gyro. We were, all this computer stuff, the HUD, we would get in the simulator, get it all fired up, and we'd turn the HUD off. And we're flying flights looking at these standby instruments. They couldn't crash us, and they couldn't figure out what we were doing. We got all this new technology, and they're like, guys, you got to use the technology, But the term it took them a while to figure it out.
That's incredible. The term I've heard from a lot of folks of my generation is being a HUD cripple. Mm-hmm. Children of the Magenta, all that stuff. So folks are so bore-sighted into the new technology that they can't revert back.
Yeah.
Whereas you guys were, that was what was familiar, was that backup flight instrument.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, that's stuff that served us well knowing the basics. But yeah, when I was in the RAG, you could pull up on a kid and he'd be glued to that video game, look in the cockpit. You could pull right up next to him, drive there looking at him. They finally, oh, there's somebody next to me.
Oh my gosh.
Look out the window.
Yeah, you can't forget what's going on around you.
Yeah. So, so there was that old school kind of reluctance to, but it's when computers, just even your everyday home computer, people that weren't familiar with it, you didn't want to, if you hit this button, what's going to happen? Can I back up? You were leery of it, but we learned eventually.
Absolutely. Heck yeah. So now the F-18, first airplane with a gun for you.
Yep.
What'd you think about firing the gun? Obviously, I'm guessing probably not. Well, was there any air-to-air component towing against a towed banner?
Yeah, we had to tow the banner. We towed the banner and get 4 F-18s and they're shooting live rounds at it.
Like an A4 pulling the banner or something like that?
F-18.
Another F-18? Really? Okay.
On a 1,000-foot steel cable, we had the banner. We'd go out over the mountains outside of Yuma, and sometimes we'd have to tell people that were camping out there, get the heck out of here. There's rounds hitting the ground out there.
Oh my gosh, yeah. So that's probably a lot of fun, I'm guessing.
Yeah, it was fun.
Did you ever use the gun for air to ground? I'm sure it's a very deep backup capability. But.
Yeah, for training, we had several flights like that, and some of my buddies that went to Iraq in the first war found it to be pretty effective.
Okay.
People riding tanks and stuff up the road, it was pretty good for destroying tanks.
Wow. Okay. So yeah, that's definitely a little bit different from the F-4 in that regard.
Yeah.
A great turning airplane from everything I've heard, and I think that's probably because naval influence. We want to get it slow to go to the boat, but also it's slow to, corner real well in a dogfight. Was that your experience as well? The airplane wants to turn.
Yeah, it was very maneuverable, but our biggest complaint when we got it was just too slow. Because it did about 1.8, I guess.
Okay.
But it had.
How does that compare to a Phantom?
The top end, the Phantom was a little bit faster than that, but getting to that point was much faster in an F-4 because on the F-4 there's on the intakes of the engine there was variable intake ramps that would program because a lot of drag builds up at the front of the engine, and so those ramps would vary.
They would move in flight, basically.
Yeah. And the F-18 didn't have that, so I can't remember the numbers, but at about 400, it would start dragging. Then because of the buildup, and so there's a couple spots during your acceleration where you were kind of not accelerating as fast as we'd want to. So,
gotcha.
And in the F-4s, we're used to come smoking in there, make one turn or something. If you're not doing well, just keep going through. And so with the F-18, we were just too slow. Then we finally figured out there was nothing to run from. After we got in there and turned with them and shot everybody, then you don't have to be that fast. So.
And I'm also told the design, I guess the F-18 tanks used to be straight on, and they had store separation issues where they'd come back and hit the jet, and they're canted outward now. Yeah. So that way, but again, you have all that drag penalty, because that's all hanging in the breeze at that angle the whole time. So.
Yeah.
What very little I know from speaking to folks.
You seem to know a lot about the
F-18. I don't believe so at all. I think it's an awesome airplane. I remember the first time, and ironically, it was a Marine F-18, the first gray jet I ever saw, VMFA 142 out of NAS Atlanta. And it was up in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And it was my initial solo in a Cessna. This is a very boring story. My initial solo in a Cessna 172 in the Civil Air Patrol. And first time at a towered field, I should say. And so went out into the working area, did some maneuvers, came back, and he was doing a flyover for a football game, I think. Mm-hmm. And I remember, tower cleared me to land on, I think it was runway 20 at Chattanooga. And he said, some kind of, cap, whatever the call sign was, you're going to look up and see an F-18 above you. And I remember thinking, what? And I'll never forget looking up through the middle of that Cessna 172, the glass, and seeing him come screaming in and fly the brake. And I landed, get off the runway, and then he comes smoking past. And I just thought it was the coolest thing in the world. It was an old Alpha Plus.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's get your heart going a little bit to see something like that.
Absolutely, yes.
But still, the F-4. We were leaving deployment in Korea one time, and to motivate the troops and depart when we were departing to go back to Japan.
Mm-hmm.
But we're going to do a 4-plane flyby. So we got all the troops on the ramp, And there's 4 of us, and we start coming through, and the skipper calls for afterburner for everybody. You know, we thought we were Blue Angels, man, coming down through there. Afterburner. Well, that's 8 different engines all lighting at the different time, because it just poured gas into in the burner can. That's all. It wasn't metered. Now we were all over the place. That was the end of our air show days in F4.
Yeah, so be very careful doing that stuff, because it can end poorly if you're not ready for it, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Tell me more about the F-18. What you have I think a really unique perspective that you can compare the Phantom and the Hornet. Obviously, like you said, the F-4 goes fast in a straight line very, very well. F-18 probably turns a little bit better. What about flying the airplane in instrument conditions? Is it a pretty stable jet?
But the F-4 is nice and heavy,
okay.
So it flies good, but it'll bounce around. I mean, and you don't have the technology. I mean, you got a gyro,
okay.
and TACAN, so it's work to fly, so, but it was fairly smooth in bad weather. I mean, for the wingman, I mean, we just get under the belly and
just drag folks through the weather
and fly. We used to fly in a lot of bad weather.
Wow.
It was, you didn't have the technology, so it was a lot of apprehension. In the F-18, of course, had a lot of better navigation, and you could, if you put the velocity vector on a certain glide path and set a certain power, it was a lot less scary, I guess.
Sure.
Bad weather, and but here's where old school stuff comes in again. We used to put dial in a bomb code into the weapon system so that the airplane thought it had a bomb on board, and then we didn't have autopilot. You had I think you had an attitude hold, but we didn't really have a true autopilot. So we'd put that code in there and make the thing think it had a weapon on it. Then we would fly. If it was bad weather, we could designate a target and tell the airplane to bomb that target. So that gave us an autopilot. So the thing was flying to it. And what we used to do is we would take the radar, and we didn't have all weather radar, but we'd run the radar up a little bit so we could see the horizon, and that was how we could check how strong the cells were or whatever. But we would take the air-to-ground mapping, and we would designate the end of the runway as a target, and then we would, go off the 180 radial, whatever the runway heading was. We'd make our own radial.
The Hornet 1 approach?
Yeah.
That's the term I've heard.
Hornet 1 approach.
Yeah.
And then we would designate that as a target. We'd drive in. When it got 3 degrees below the horizon, we put the bomb sight in the pipper, and it'd take you to the end of the runway. But that's kind of old school stuff.
Yeah, that's incredible, though.
I guess I keep coming back to the old school stuff, but
no, but there's nothing wrong with that.
It seems like it works.
Well, I'll give you, Paul. I'm 31, and I feel old all the time. And here's maybe a different data point. You use ForeFlight, any of the electronic tools and stuff in your airplane? No?
A little bit.
That's probably because you're a better pilot than me and the rest of us.
No, I don't think so.
So I grew up in the T6, civilian flying before the military, even in the T6, in the Navy, in the TH-57, the training helicopter. Paper charts. Everything had to be paper approach plates.
Yep.
And I liked that. And even then, iPhones and iPads and all that great Gucci stuff we have now. It was coming of age, but this is 2015. It's not a million years ago. It was pretty well out there, but I never learned to use it. Yeah. I always remember thinking, you know what? I can't lose a paper chart. I can't break a paper chart. Yeah. And the story I like to tell all the kiddos, because now they get issued an iPad, the Navy, which is great. It's a wonderful piece of technology. It's a wonderful tool. So they're issued an iPad. We have paper pubs, but a lot of times they don't get maybe used as much as they used to be.
Right.
And listen to salty old me in Bahrain in 120 degree Bahrain and 99% humidity. You had a co-pilot leave the iPad up on the dash of the helicopter in the sun and give it 2 minutes and the battery, it overheats. It's a brick.
Right.
I remember distinctly we didn't have air conditioning in the helicopter, sweating so much, and I just cannot get the screen to unlock.
Yeah.
It's a brick.
Uh-huh.
And so I'd say, yep, it's great to get the nav bag out, and you pull out this greasy chart, and you open it up, and because we had hydraulic fluid and dirt everywhere in the 53. She's a dirty helicopter at times. And it worked, right? Like I always love falling. I hate to say falling down to that level, right? You come down a level of automation.
Uh-huh.
Paper charts work. You can orient yourself with them.
Yeah.
It's wonderful, but if you don't ever learn that, you can't ever return to that level of knowledge.
Yeah, what would these kids do if you walked out to the airplane with a student and said, all right, give me your iPad?
And we do that.
And
we do that occasionally. Yeah.
Now you figure it out.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I had a kid one time, you graduate, the last air-to-ground part of the RAG was an eight-plane strike, and you had an instructor lead each division, but the students did all the planning and all that. And so I was the lead airplane of the 8 ship, and we're coming back to El Toro. And something happened, lost my HUD, lost some things. And so I'm just telling the other instructor what's going on. And some wingman pipes up and says, you want me to take the lead? And I'm looking at him like, 2, bingo, your lead's on fire. Right?
That's all I want to hear from you.
I'm like, where is he? And he's like, well, he didn't understand. I'm like, you go west to the ocean. You go by the Palomar Observatory. Make sure that goes down your right side. You hit the ocean. You take another right. You go up to the first marina. You take a right. You're headed for El Toro. Don't speak again. So
that's awesome.
It's the technology. People, they can't do anything without it.
It's a tool. It's a sword, but the sword has 2 sides, right? The blade cuts both ways. It can be wonderful, right. And it can be a force multiplier. And if it's, like I said, being a HUD cripple, if all you are used to is flying the HUD and it breaks.
Now, I will admit that I didn't, I knew what I needed to know.
Of course.
I probably could have utilized some functions better. So it works both ways. You fall back on the old school stuff, but you need to learn the stuff that you can.
Absolutely.
That's really helpful too. So
absolutely. Just for those listening, VFR sectionals are not just for wrapping Christmas presents in. They're wonderful tools, and there's a lot of great info on there. But man, that moving map is pretty cool too.
I remember that when we first got in the F-18s, we played with that moving map more than anything. But like, wow, that was just amazing. You can see where you are on the map. It was incredible.
Yeah. You mentioned deployments in the F-4. Where'd you get to deploy to in the F-18?
I didn't go anywhere.
Really?
Our squadron, we were standing up the squadron with F-18s, so we were just doing the training when people would get back from the RAG. Even though you're done with the RAG, you still have a fleet syllabus that you have to go through. So, and then we did all the local deployments. The bombing, weapons stats, and
absolutely
fighter weapons stats and stuff like that. So, but then I got out before going to. I was offered to be an LSO, and I'm like, I don't think so. You're going to send me as a Marine to a Navy squadron to do 2 pumps.
Yeah. And
then I'm going to go to that all the training to now bring a Marine squadron. So I'm going to do 3 tours on ship in the next 3 years.
That's a lot.
Yeah, that wasn't my idea of fun.
I can understand that. You mentioned it briefly, your call sign. Is that a story that's suitable for sharing, or probably not?
Trash.
So here's the thing I always tell everyone. Every naval aviator has the story, the real story, and then they have the story they tell their family. I have 2 stories, so I don't know if you do.
My story has pretty much been, I can't tell it.
No worries.
Tell it.
I gave you a choice right now, F-4, F-18. What would you choose?
I've had that so many times. It's hard to say. I guess it depends what we're doing.
What's the mission? Yeah, that's fair.
The F-4 is such a cool airplane. We were in the Philippines, and we went over the mountain to the Air Force base. I'm trying to think of what it escapes me now, but they had F-15s, and the Air Force has all these rules, and the Marines, it's like get permission later or whatever. We pulled in 2 F-4s. They got F-15s, and we pull in, and we're packing the chutes. They had a chute that
drag
you pop
chute
on landing.
Yeah.
And you had to repack it, and the tail cone of the airplane opened up, and there's a spring, and you had to really pack it in there. Well, I pull in, and I shut down, and one of the hydraulic pumps fails, so I'm flooding hydraulic fluid. And the other airplane, the guy's packing the chute, the back seat, and he hits his knuckle on the edge of the tin and slices his finger open. Well, in my back seat, I had the flight surgeon. And he was so good. We put him through the Rio syllabus, and we tried to get him winged, but the Navy wouldn't do it. But he was our flight surgeon. I'd rather fly with him than some of the real guys. But so he's a flight surgeon. So he's got this guy's hand up on the wing, and he's sewing the cut up. And me and the other backseater are opening up panels, and we found the leak, and we're taking the hydraulic line off and asking these Air Force guys. The Air Force guys were just, they're blown away, because they didn't know he's a flight surgeon. So you're stitching up your own hands, you're fixing your own airplanes. You can't do any of that kind of stuff.
Yes.
But in an F-4, you can. It's just cool.
Yeah.
So that, I'm always a little biased to the F-4, but the F-18 just remarkably better in every system, so.
Do you remember ballpark how many hours you left in the F-18?
About 1,200.
12. Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
That's really, really cool. Favorite?
My 1,000-hour patch, anyway.
That's awesome. Yeah. I didn't even leave with one of those in the 53, so that's really cool. For folks of my generation, my age, I've had a very different experience with naval aviation than I think you have had. What is it that you think, again, big, broad strokes, broad question here. Mm-hmm. What have I missed out on? Because I think I have a general idea. I saw, as a little kid, I've read about Desert Storm. I've seen global war on terrorism, Iraq, what's going on now. Naval aviation has changed a lot. I think in a lot of good ways and maybe in some maybe not so good ways, but you've seen both. You've seen that transition, that evolution. I don't know. It's a really broad question, but what could we maybe look back to the past and see that we need to keep doing and keep doing well?
Tailhook.
Okay.
I say that, you guys have came into the politically correct.
Yeah.
Other ways to describe it, gender neutral.
Yeah.
Era. You missed a lot of, the antics and the experiences.
O clubs are not really a thing the way they were.
No, O clubs were roaring back there. And it created such camaraderie in a squadron, and it seems like it's more difficult to have those close relationships in squadrons now.
That's fair.
But you have to depend on those guys. We're not just flying around for fun. You could be in harm's way, and you've got to be able to trust that guy and guy, gal.
Absolutely. Yep. You're a team.
So it's I get out about the time the last tail hook.
Oh wow. Okay.
And so that that ruined a lot of good guys' careers for no reason. But
yeah,
that's I don't want to.
Yeah. No. Of
make
course.
Political here, but
no, not at all.
I think the culture is different than, and I say you missed it. Maybe we missed, all the whiz bang stuff that you guys have.
So yeah.
So I'm not saying one's better than the other, but we had a hell of a time.
Yeah. And
it reflected, because it was a work hard, play hard thing, I guess, But
no, that makes perfect sense. Yeah, it's just I don't know. I wasn't around. I can't see both. I can't compare both. One of the things that I've always, kind of the eye that I viewed military aviation through, I love to read. So even as a little kid, reading books and then being around folks, I like to surround myself with really, I'm not an interesting person, but I like to surround myself with.
Then you think you are.
I'm truly not.
Well, give yourself credit.
The guy next
this project that you're doing.
Well, thank you. I really do appreciate that. The metric I measure myself by, I think in aviation, I have a friend. I don't know if you'd consider me a friend. I definitely consider him a friend. He has 2 air-to-air kills in the F-15.
Wow.
I have some friends back home in Tennessee that are incredible helicopter pilots. I won't mention names, but like state police aviation, so pulling people out of the mountains. Mm-hmm. There are people that are alive today because of this individual. Have done real things with real aircraft. That's who I aspire to be. That's who I want to surround myself with, is those really, really unique people. Yeah. So I definitely know that I missed in many ways. Some people will talk about the glory days of naval aviation, but I also think they can be today. I had wonderful experiences with wonderful people. I hope that continues. That's the goal.
Well, you've had opportunity. That's what I missed out on was people probably glamorize combat more than the actual event. So everybody's I would have loved to do this, that, but I missed out on deploying for in any of those exercises because I was getting out just before the first Iraq War kicked off, and I got my telegram one night, report here, do this, do that, and I'm like, they're calling me back, to go fly an F-18 in combat. And at the end of it, it just said, don't execute these orders, just contact us. They wanted to be able to find people that were still, fairly current. And
Really?
So I never got to do it. And I say never got to. I mean, war's not a thing, that you should be wanting to do, but
No.
you train.
Yeah.
You train and all that.
You worked incredibly hard all your career. Yeah.
Yeah. So I didn't. That you've got that opportunities if it's an opportunity.
No, I understand.
So there's things I missed out on too.
Yeah.
But back when you used to fly the crap out of an airplane all during the day and then go to the club at night. I mean, it was a lot of fun.
That makes sense. Yeah, for sure. I like to, and I don't know if this is maybe a meaningful example, but when people ask me, what is it like flying the 53? I have a story. I have a story in the 53 that it doesn't encompass everything, obviously, but this is what the mission is like. For us, for example, it's alone and unafraid. We're not escorted by anyone. Go out, take off low altitude. An example might be out of maybe a country like Bahrain, out into the distance. We have a GPS because you can't see things in the water right here. Go to this GPS point, you stream whatever your gear might be. So we go into a hover, that gear goes into the water via a very big winch. We tow that gear through the water. Yeah. And you tow tracks back and forth. We're looking to find those mines underwater. Right. When you're done with that, you recover the gear, you fly back. That's the mission set. So I like to, I don't know, people usually like stories. That's kind of the point of the project here. What was that average flight in an F-4 or an F-18? What was obviously it varies and it depends, air to air, air to ground. But if you had to tell, and this could be, I don't know, an air-to-air flight, like you mentioned, training or air to ground, what would you have? Do you have a story for the F-4? Do you have a story for the F-18 that kind of encompasses how great that airplane was?
Well,
I know it's a broad question.
Yeah, when I get done with all my flight time and divided my hours by landings, my average flight was 0.8.
Wow. It's not very long.
No. Some of the things, we used to go through the hot refuel in Beaufort, for example. Sometimes we'd do 5 flights. We'd launch 12 airplanes out. It was a dogfight for whoever you could find, you fought, and then we'd come back through the pits 5 times. And you had 12 airplanes. I mean, you'd catch a guy going in with no fuel. You'd see somebody. I mean, it was fantastic. But that's not the norm. But so our flights were short because we're fuel limited. I think you could burn an F-4 bone dry in afterburner in 8 minutes. I think it carried 8,000 pounds of gas internal. But,
okay.
So our typical flight would be is either air to ground or air to air. Sometimes in the F-18 it could be both. The F-4 was more specialized because of the way we had to load the airplane and things for each mission. But so it'd be go out, fight somebody, come back, do a hot turn, go out and do it again, and that'd probably be it. So it was always an air-to-air or air-to-ground training mission, and it frequently was with some other agency or Air Force,
sure,
something like that. So it was pretty typical, but it got I don't want to say complicated, but in the F-18, in the F-4, they'd tell you you got to target 30 miles there, and we'd run into our limited radar. We might lock them up at 15 miles, and we'd have a little time to do something, and then we'd pass, and we'd make a couple turns, and then disengage. And then in the F-18, it advanced to where if you locked a guy up, you could get all the information on him. It would print out his altitude, whereas in the F-4, we were going, all right, we've got him locked up. He's 10 high at 15 miles. That angle means he's 3,000 feet higher than us. We're at 32,000 feet. That's how we figured out.
And you're interpreting that from the raw radar data.
Yeah. Wow. Using the antenna elevation, and you're using the angle, the drift rate, and all that. So in the F-18, we're like, wow, you just put it over a guy, lock him up, and you get his heading, his altitude, all that. But he knows that he's locked up because he's got the gear to know he's locked up. In F-4, we didn't. And so he now turns so that he's changing the aspect, so decreasing the range of the missile that could be shot at him. So now that drops lock, and then they may circle around and force you to turn. So it's all these games with the radar. So you can make a guy turn by locking him up. Sometimes in the F-4 we'd be doing 600-700 miles an hour coming at each other. 1,200 miles of closure. Boom. In the F-4 and the F-18s, we're fighting F-16s or F-15s or F-14s, where you're playing all these games. You might never get to the merge because you're always turning to avoid the missiles and all that.
Yeah.
And that's another reason to know the basics, because you could do this without locking a guy up. If you could, interpret the contact that's on your screen, but the new guys didn't know how to do that. So another old school thing coming in, but it got to be such a game of technology that sometimes you never got to the actual fight. So, but most of the time we would always end the exercises with a dogfight.
Of course.
And so
I'm just trying to think here, in a 1G 0 knot environment, interpreting that radar data has to be challenging. In a moving jet at very fast speed, that has to be a heck of a.
It's something, because the way it used to be designed is, in an F-4 we get the big split and you come at a guy. It's an enemy coming towards you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you find him, then you've got to offset enough so that when you pass him, you've got enough radius of your turn to roll in behind him and shoot a weapon. So what we try to do is shoot a forward quarter weapon. So that was the purpose, to deploy one missile, get around behind him. So,
okay.
And you're watching this drifting dot on looks like an old submarine scope, but
under G at high speed while maneuvering.
I think we want to get a 10,000 foot displacement from them.
Okay.
So it's not that complicated once you get used to it, I guess. But if you put this dot on your scope and it's drifting, it doesn't come straight down your scope because you're not necessarily head on with zero angle off. So you put it on your scope and it starts drifting. So then you turn to make it stop drifting. So now if you turn 20 degrees and it stops, then you got a 20 degree angle. And you're heading 020.
Okay.
He must be heading 180 because he's 20 degrees up. So you drive in, and then at 5 or 6 miles you need to turn away from him to get separation between you. So now you turn to run parallel to him so you can swing around behind him. So there's a lot of calculations.
Absolutely.
But, that technology did all that for us with the F-18.
In the F-18.
If you could use it, because you had to keep playing all those games. So
you mentioned formation flying.
Yeah.
Big difference, I'm guessing, flying a Phantom in form versus a Hornet, or is it pretty similar?
It's fairly similar. The F-18 was a lot easier to fly.
Okay, just in general, I'm guessing.
Just in general. I mean,
Gotcha.
the workload was less. It just did so many things automatically.
Before we started recording, you were talking about a particularly close pass with another aircraft. That wasn't a form fight. That was an air combat fight, correct?
Yeah, that
similar
was
air combat.
4v4. F-16s out of Seymour Johnson. We were out of Beaufort. And we met somewhere, one of the ranges, and same thing. It was an intercept and then a dogfight once we get there. And there was another F-18 that was out to my left, a half mile or so, as we were running in, and the F-16s came at us, and they were in a turn. They turned, and you don't turn long in a dogfight. You're always checking. If you go in a constant turn, you don't see a guy coming up behind you. It's a midair possibility because you can't. Your wing up, you can't see over there, and it's just too predictable. So you get shot like that. So you're always leveling out and checking and turning. And so I'm driving here. This F-16 is just making a big turn in front of me, and I'm waiting for him to do something, and he didn't, and he just. Right over my canopy, I just heard this big whoo of the engines, and I've got this. I've just dumped the thing out of control to avoid hitting them, so I'm flopping around.
So you go OCF, okay?
Losing some altitude, and then it's the Air Force. They got all excited, but they're like, "Trash, you okay? Yeah, I'll catch up. Keep going." So the Marines finished the deal, but that was pretty colorful. I mean, he was right over my canopy. I mean, I just shoved the stick forward and just practically closed my eyes, I think. Just
wow.
Right over.
Time dilation at all? Did you feel things slow down, or it just happened so quickly you probably didn't even have a chance to realize what was going on?
No, I mean, it didn't bother me that much, really.
Gosh. You mentioned an early emergency in the F-4. Anything in the F-18? It was a new airplane, so I'm guessing it's probably pretty reliable at that stage.
Oh, geez, I don't remember any big things. I mean, you always have the, flaps get stuck, or after, you can't I've had some engine problems.
Okay.
Shut things down. Nothing where I ever felt it was a real big deal.
That's great. Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, Delta variants of the airplane?
Yes.
So Alpha and Charlie, single seat. I want to make sure I'm breaking it down for everyone at home.
You've got a lot of information.
I love the Hornet. I think it's an awesome airplane. The Bravo and the Delta, obviously the two-seat.
Right.
For the Marine Corps, was that primarily for the air-to-ground mission set?
Yeah.
Okay.
With the Bravo, I think just came about for training.
Okay.
They only had it in the rags, and the D came along as the actual two-seater with a two-seat mission.
Okay. So missionized aft cockpit. There was no flight controls back there either?
In the D, no.
Okay.
If I don't recall there being anything.
And from what I've read recently, I think the construct the Marine Corps is going to now is obviously the F-35 Bravo and then F-35 Charlie. So going to the amphib, going to the big CVN, the big carrier. But the F-18 squadrons are now combined. So it used to be there were single seat Hornet squadrons and then the two seat, and now it's all being combined, which is an interesting mix.
Yeah. They because we had two seaters in the rag, they used to do some fact-finding mission. People from Washington, people from would come down and want to fly with us.
Sure.
That's somebody else's flight time that they're taking. So I used to fly some of those, and we'd run the back seat down as low as it would go and pull the circuit breaker so they couldn't. They're barely looking over the canopy, and then we would strap them in so tight I think they would lose circulation, and then we put the heat on as full heat and point it all towards the back. And then we do the old, hey, I dropped my pen. It's rolling down by your right foot. Can you pick it up? And they bend over and you put 8 Gs on them, and they get their head between their knees for as long as you want to hold them there.
Yeah.
And then we would go by the Hollywood sign and say, hey, there's the Hollywood sign. And they'd look out that way, and you turn 8 Gs the other way and pin them against the window. Then they came back. They did not want to.
They'd found all the facts they were looking for.
Yeah. Do not come back. We don't want you riding with us.
Jeez. Best flight in the F-4. Can you think of one? Just the memorable phantom flight.
Wow. I think I'd have to think it would be a conglomeration of all flights. It would be representative of
totally fair.
Flights.
Yeah.
You'd take off, go fight somebody, and then land in Oceana for happy hour.
Going to the bar, the club. Yeah.
I know. I may be emphasizing that too much. I realize that I'm emphasizing that a lot.
No, not at all. What about the Hornet? I mean, again, different airplane, same mission set, but was there any one particular flight that was really memorable or you look back on fondly?
As a flight I didn't take, probably was pretty interesting. In El Toro, I was a maintenance check pilot. So whenever fairly significant maintenance done, somebody had to take it out and run it through, and make sure it was okay. And the Blues had just gotten to El Centro for their winter training, and I was in El Toro, and North Island in San Diego was where they did a lot of the repairs. So I was tasked to fly down to North Island and pick up a Blue Angel airplane, deliver it to El Centro. So it's painted up, it's ready for the air show season, and I'm thinking this is gonna be great. So I taxi out, and I give it the hold short, and they call me back in, and some colonel was gonna take it down there. So, I didn't.
Are you a captain at the time?
I'm a captain.
So Marine 03. Okay.
Yeah, and I've got 1,000 hours. I'm a salty captain. I'm a maintenance check guy. I've been all over with the. I know what I'm doing.
Absolutely.
About that time of your career is when you start really being valuable to the service. So this colonel takes the flight. So that I thought that's pretty crappy. J.O. gets does all the work, and he takes the airplane. But it probably was a good thing, because I probably would have flown under the Coronado Bridge, or there's more admirals on Coronado Island than anywhere else. So it probably saved
your career.
So the best flight was probably the flight that I didn't take.
What was it like being in? I didn't realize you were an FCP in the airplane. Was it a pretty simple, big air quotes here, was it a simple airplane to FCF?
Yeah. The worst part was there was a spin. I don't remember exactly. There's a spin control.
Okay. So you guys would spin the jet?
We would deactivate the flight control that prevent, that was supposed to automatically do the spin stuff. So that would be a little squirrely.
Okay.
But other than that, it wasn't anything different. Go fast, go slow, make sure this works, that works.
Gotcha.
So
I have a different appreciation for FCF only because in the 53, a lot of times we would go out to the bird and you might not even get the rotor head online, or you'd spend all your time on FCF just on the ground with the head online tracking engines. You would never even.
A beast.
It's a big machine, but it would make you work for the flight time. So
yeah, when that thing comes in, when you're out in the field somewhere, and that thing comes in to pick you up, because we did that back in the
absolutely
in the grounds part. That was just motivating when that big thing comes flying in.
I've said it before. A lot of times I would forget how big of an aircraft it is, and you'd get to the edge of the rotor arc doing a hot seat, 79-foot rotor arc, and you just kind of look up, especially at night, and realize, my gosh, it's a big airplane. Yeah. It makes a lot of noise, but it doesn't go fast. You went fast for sure.
Yeah, it doesn't need to go fast. It looks like that. It's just, and if it went fast, it wouldn't look as fast because it's so big.
That's very true. Very, very true. Well, cool. I'm gonna look down here very rudely at my list of questions, but Paul, I can't say thank you enough, and I really do appreciate you sitting down and kind of talking me through your career. Before I finish up, though, one thing I definitely want to talk about, and you've got it on your shirt right there. No one can see it except for me. Is the CJ6, the airplane that you currently own and fly now. Not a lot of folks are really. A lot of people think when they think of warbirds, probably think of P-51 or a Corsair or maybe an American warbird. But there's an awesome community of folks that fly a lot of Soviet, or in your case, well, I say Soviet, maybe Soviet bloc, trainers. Could you tell me a little bit about the CJ6?
It's called the Nanchang CJ6. It's the primary trainer for the Chinese flight students, like our T-34.
Absolutely.
So it's front seat, back seat, and they go through that before they put them in MiGs. And back with the fall of the wall, we were able to start acquiring these. So there's about 300 of them in the country. Okay. And about that many yaks, too. The CJ6 Nanchang is kind of based on the yak. Everybody calls it a yak, but there's a lot of things
very different
about it. But
absolutely.
It's kind of a fun plane. It's a radial engine, big puff of smoke when you start up. It's like the old Pappy Boyington days. And
is it compressed air like the yak?
Yeah.
Okay.
Runs on air, no hydraulic system. So it's the closest thing that we can do to getting back in the squadron. We have clinics all around the country, and so 30 airplanes will show up, and we'll spend a 4-day weekend. And we manage to get around here locally. We get a little bit of, I guess we call it BFM. So a little bit of not dogfighting, but then we do formation flying, and mine's painted up, and it's got a dihedral wing. So it kind of looks like a Corsair. Yep. So speaking of composite things, mine's representative of the Marine Corps. I got a Marine Corps paint job from my old squadron on it. So
how long have you had the airplane?
I've had this one about probably 5 years, and I had one previously for 5 or 6. So about 12 years or so I've had it.
Do you know the lineage where they came out? Out of China, I'm guessing.
Yeah, they come from out of China. When we get them, we put them on take the wings off and box them up and send them over.
I think there's a couple folks that restore yaks and Nanchangs in the U.S. Just one of those folks basically Americanizes it, gets an N number associated with the airplane, and then it's kind of sold on the open market. Yeah,
or a lot of guys get them. There's a couple brokers that can get you airplanes, but a lot of I don't know how many are coming in anymore. Okay, a lot of them are here and they get kind of sold here and there, but
absolutely.
But that's fun. It's a lot. It's back to basics, and the propeller spins the opposite way. Really? Of an American plane. You probably heard the story when my buddy with the yak got his leg hit by the prop. No. Yeah. I started calling him boar's head because his thigh looked like sliced up roast beef.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was. If you care to hear about it.
Yeah, absolutely.
We had pulled our airplanes out of the hangar and we were sitting nose to tail. He was behind me to get them started up between the hangars. He couldn't get it started, so I jumped out of my airplane. I had a guy that was giving a ride in the back seat. He stayed in the airplane. I jumped out. We did some things to get it started, and then he was pulling the prop through because the radial engine, the oil will sit in the bottom, so we want to pull that up. Okay. And it coughed, and that prop swung,
And
and
bit
usually
him.
when that happens, somebody's dead. So
Yeah.
I look at him and down he goes, and I'm like, this is not good,
Yeah.
And I started thinking, wonder what's the appropriate amount of time before we have to wait to ask his girlfriend out if he doesn't make it. But so I go over and his leg is cut open. So
He's lucky he's not dead.
I have a shop rag in my hand, and it's not enough to get a tourniquet on because it's too small. So I basically get his meat packed together, and we get the bleeding pretty well slowed down. Well, my cell phone's in my airplane, his is in his airplane. I've got it under control on the ground there, and I'm thinking, now what do? Do I get up to get help, and does he start bleeding again, or do I wait? I don't know how long we have.
You could bleed out from an injury like that. Yeah.
So I got him on the ground, and I'm telling him, I'm gonna take your tools. We're both in front of the hangar. I get your tools if this doesn't work out. So finally, the guy in my back seat, I've been yelling to him. He finally, it's noisy. The airport, he can't hear, and he's taking selfies. We were hoping that we would be in the background of one of the selfies, but it didn't turn out that way.
Jeez.
So he finally gets. So we have him run up, and a guy comes out. There's a helo medevac guy, former military guy, getting his fixed wing ratings here, and he happened to be in the thing. So he was the only one that had a belt on. It was hot. We all had shorts and stuff. So we got his legs cinched off, and then here comes the medical people.
Sure.
They show up in a fire truck.
Was this here at Pensacola?
Yeah, it was right out
Oh,
here.
wow. Okay.
And so they show up in a fire truck, and we get him on the ground, and he's not going to die now anyway. It doesn't seem. And these guys are walking around, the medical guys, and they're like, wow, dang. I'm like, can you, we can say that, and, you could try to fix
You can help him,
Yeah. So he went to the hospital, but it lucked out because he didn't hit any major artery, didn't break his thigh.
Wow.
So, and what happened was when I went up to turn the magneto off, it was in the off position, but when I touched it, just barely click. So it was just a hair out of off. Yeah. And he got whacked by it. So
to be so careful with that.
That's
That's an aviation story.
Yeah,
that's what we're here for.
These airplanes. So
you mentioned earlier. You kind of alluded to earlier, there's a unit of other airplanes that you might have fought air to air. There's a really great book by Steve Davies about the 4477th, and their motto, I'll use a little profanity. I said I wouldn't. Be humble, you cool fucker. And I'm not a jet guy. I wasn't part of that unit, but I jokingly say that is the motto of my life, because the moment you, especially in aviation, the moment you give a little bit of room, a little bit, I got this. I've done this a million times. That little bit of confidence, it bites you. Yep. And you have to hope that it bites you in a small way and you live, frankly, and you can tell that story to others, and you kind of take a step back. And that was, I think, a very, I don't know, I'm not certainly applying it the way that squadron did, is a totally different mindset for them. Their motto, these guys were some of the best fighter pilots in the world, and they were flying, it's not secret anymore. There's literally books about it, but aircraft that we got from the former Soviet Union, and the thought process for them was, you guys are the greatest in the world at this, and when you're exposing these aircraft to U.S. pilots, you can kick their ass any day of the week. You're good at it. Yeah. That doesn't make them better.
Yeah, and you do it all the time.
Yeah,
we do varying missions.
Exactly. And so the thought process that one of their former squadron commanders wanted to imbue upon them was, be humble, you cool fucker. It doesn't matter how good you are. It matters that you can train and help others.
You've probably heard this joke before, but we had the saying, don't ever ask a guy if he's a fighter pilot. If he is, he'll tell you. If he's not, why embarrass him? So that goes along those lines of what you're saying. But I don't think there's anybody, if they're honest with themselves, any aviator that hasn't scared the crap out of themselves at some point. And because they got maybe too complacent, and it brings you back, and you're right, you always got to remember that. No matter, you could be the coolest pilot there is, but that inattentiveness or that cockiness will bite you.
Yep, absolutely. Well, let me see. I don't know that I have any other grand questions or anything.
Being in the Marine Corps lends itself well to being a criminal defense attorney too. So all the naval aviators that I was around well for the next chapter, which we're probably not getting into today.
Well, no, that's a really great point. I remember my lessons from SEER too. Yeah, always stay in the box in the circle if you know how to answer the questions. Only what's asked of you. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, so I was going to say I definitely know what's next for you, but I certainly wish you luck in that. Paul? What should I have asked you in just kind of looking back on those wonderful years flying the F-4, flying the Hornet, to kind of bookend it all? Anything I didn't ask about, or anything you want to tell me?
Oh gosh, but, I don't know. We could talk about this forever. I was kind of laughing to myself when I saw one of the other interviews that you did, and I saw it was 3 hours long. I'm like, my God, how did they go 3 hours?
We're at an hour and 40 right now, so you'd be surprised. When
you get guys talking about aviation, you can just go on forever.
Heck yeah.
We probably shifted subjects several times because an issue comes up or a memory comes up, and so it's not too organized, but
nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what I want to capture, and that's what I love so much is hanging around the airport. You're with like-minded folks. If you're not out there, if you're not in that environment, you miss out on that. And there's a lot of really cool stories you miss out on too. So
there's the airplane, the types that we the ones we flew in that you referred to. Mm-hmm. We were in Lemoore and used to launch out of Lemoore to fight them out of Las Vegas. I think that's where they were.
Okay.
And Tonopah.
Somewhere in the desert. Yeah.
Go out there. And so in Lemoore, we were there in F-4s, and the F-18 RAG was there, and some of the first units to stand up in the Navy were there. So the F-18 guys thought they were just cooler than anything, Well, we couldn't stand for that too much, so we had gone out for dinner, and we were sitting in the O Club, about four of us in the O Club. That's got a big model of an F-18 on the hanging from the ceiling, and there's four of us, and the bartender's getting ready to close up, and she says, "You guys watch everything. I'm going to go throw the trash away and stuff." So as soon as she's got out of sight, we're trying to steal that F-18, and we're going to take it back to Beaufort with us as a trophy. Well, that thing's wired to the ceiling by the wings, and I got my feet on the ceiling, and I finally get it to snap, and I of course go down on my back on the table, and it makes a big noise. So these guys all run. They're leaving. I run out the back door with this F-18 thing. It's good size. I get out there, I'm in the pool yard. I'm like, there's nowhere to go. Yeah. So I throw it over this concrete wall, and I climb over. By this time, these guys are walking across the front lawn of the O Club. So I come around the corner, guns. I got it on my head, guns. Start chasing them around. So we get back to the room, and I've got the F-18 laying on one bed, and I'm laying on the other bed, and I'm thinking, this probably wasn't a good idea. So I take it, and I sneak back to the O Club, and I put it in the bushes by the front door. Well, the next day, we're having a all-hands briefing with the CO, and we have a brand new warrant officer that just joined our squadron. So the CO says, all right, we got some problems here with this F-18 got stolen last night. And he asked the warrant officer, did you see anything? Well, I remember I went right by his room outside, and I remember looking him right in the eyes when I was going by, and I'm thinking, what's this guy going to do? He didn't see anything. So it was funny. But the thing ended up being the wind tunnel test version of the YF-22, that was whatever the predecessor was, and it was very valuable. And so I missed a flight as a penalty. I missed the flight with an airplane that was very, and at the time there was a Navy chief that was doing model airplane work, and there was just a big article about the waste of time that was to the Navy. So I had to pay his out of town hobby shop prices to get it fixed. Missed the flight. So that's one of the trash stories, and I remember several times the CO going, trash. I'm like, why are you always calling for me, Skipper? It's not. But so missed out on a good flight there.
Man, yeah, I bet. Anything else?
No.
Thank you for taking the time. Truly, I really do appreciate it.
I appreciate you. You're actively doing this now in this day and age, and where there's a lot more problems in the world than we had. So. Appreciate your service.
Appreciate your service. Thank you so very much, Paul. I appreciate it.
Thanks.